How sanctions are killing Russia. Russia's falling. Old sanctions of 2014 sabotaged development of new innovative weaponry. New sanctions of 2022 are undermining Russian military efforts, destroying its technological chains and communications lines, thus breaking country apart. Thread. Western analysts greatly overestimate the robustness of Russia. Russians themselves are now talking about the imminent end of the state. Consider a Peskov slip of tongue, special operation launched to get rid of Russia.
To launch a special operation, military operation, to get rid of entire Russia that was created next to our borders.
What? To get rid of Russia?
Anti-Russia.
End of Russia. That's what is on the table right now. Consider this talk show of Soloveyov, top Putin's propagandist. Their point is any treaty Russia signs with Ukraine will mark its defeat. That's gonna be beginning of the end, not of Putin's regime but of Russian state.
Который подпишет Россия с властью, которая сегодня в Киев, будет означать поражение России в этой операции. Полное и окончательное. В глазах народа России, в глазах армии России, в глазах всего мира. И тогда поддержка, о которой ты говорил, и Индии, и Китая, уйдет, и арабского мира испарится. Сейчас на повестке дня стоит, когда началось противостояние между Соединенными Штатами и Россией и НАТО. Я сказал, Россия предъявила ультиматум и себе тоже. Россия не имеет права проиграть эту операцию в Украине. Не имеет права. Это будет означать, что у России нет сил справиться с кем? С Украиной? С Зеленским? И пошли на договор. Хасавюрт по сравнению с ним, это еще будет большое дипломатическое достижение. Потому что Хасавюрт не был началом конца государства России. Он был одним. А этот договор может быть началом конца России как государства. Потому что если не удается навести порядок на Украине, что вы замахиваетесь на НАТО? Чего вы замахиваетесь на Соединенные Штаты? Вы с Зеленским не могли справиться, так чего вы? То есть тут у вас на повестке дня стоит один вопрос. Или вы победите в этой операции, или начинаете обратный отсчет.
Medinsky, Putin's negotiator in Ukraine, claims that the very existence of Russia is on stake now. Well, then the question arises, how did these guys put Russia on stake? Is it compulsive gambling disorder or what? Well, they were sure of Russian victory. We have absolute military superiority and can easily crush Ukraine. We may not invade, but if we do, we'll 100% win. This was based on assumption about the invincibility of Russian army. Compare vibe of Russian TV in late February and now.
И Украина поймет все. И не надо никаких иллюзий. Возьмем Киев. Ни о каком быстром решении и речи не идет, потому что противостоит армия вторая в Европе после нашей, которую 8 лет готовили.
The assumption that Russia gonna win was based on three elements. First, on the mythos of World War II. They conveniently forgot that in World War II Russia fought on the side of greatest economic power and now it's fighting against. See Soviet soldiers on American Studebakers. Many talk of Serdyukov's military reforms. However, efficiency Maxim Serdyukov made interest groups angry and was fired. His successor Shoigu was a court maxer and Pierre Maxer more interested in building his personality cult than the army. His flatterers even portray him as Sabetty. Many talk of Syrian war, where Russia got so much experience proving its fighting capacity. Putin believed in it. Russian generals believed in it. Western experts believed in it. Only Russian soldiers didn't. Consider this interview with a Wagner mercenary who fought in Syria. On the 26th of February, Wagner mercenary debunked a myth of real combat experience Russian army got in Syria. Aviation got a real experience, air defense too, but the land troops didn't. Those who expect a victorious march through Ukraine are wrong. Ukraine got much stronger since 2015.
Вообще, вооруженные силы, несмотря на то, что как они себя там разрекламировали в результате вот этого освободительного похода в Сирию, да, они же реального боевого опыта там не получают. Они не участвуют в боях. То есть они получают опыт пребывания на территории, на которой вот идет война. Вот этот опыт. Ну, это же сомнительный опыт, он как бы он непосредственно не имеет отношения к понятию боевой опыт. Реального боевого опыта они там не получают. И причем я возьму на себя смелость, вот, по-моему, все. Ну, за исключением там летчиков, ПВО, ну, у них своя специфика, своя направленность, вот, они там какую-то практику получают. А вот все представители сухопутных войск там не получают качественного боевого опыта. Даже, могу, извините за такую смелость высказывания, даже ССО, она не получает боевого опыта. Все это опыт какой-то, он некачественный. Абсолютно как бы такой вот, который не предполагает возможную готовность армии к какой-то более большой войне. Это у нас уже из поколения в поколение оно передается несколько пренебрежительное отношение к вероятному противнику. Ах, там, помнили Дебальцево? Вот, говорит, Дебальцево, как мы там свернули. Они забыли о том, что это было в 2015 году, а сейчас уже 22 год. И там и армия украинская уже не там. Вот. И обстоятельства уже не теми. Так что я бы очень сильно поостерегся заявлять о том на их месте, что мы прямо пройдем там победным маршем. По-моему, что-то вы заблуждаетесь немного. Победный марш не получится. А те вот эти вот, которые заявляют, ну им же не в окопы не лезть, им же не рисковать собой. Потому они вот так вот бахвальствуют.
Other Russian military sources, which I'm not gonna quote, even argued that Syrian experience was negative for Russian army. For example, much of their role was convoying Syrian and Irani supply caravans through a floor desert where it's difficult to set up an ambush unnoticed. In Syria, Russians learned that convoying caravans is easy. Now they try to repeat the Syrian experience in Ukraine. Being used to convoying caravans through desert, they now convoy them through forests or residential areas. There they get into ambushes and are exterminated.
Это чисто брошенный, блядь, да?
Ты давай, наверное, сюда вставай.
Заехать сюда, да?
Ну, конечно, батина застрянут. Если на летней резинке тоже нахуй застрянут. Все, вставай. Пидорасы, блядь. Нахуй все. Нахуй. Что, дружочек? Приехал сюда, да? Полежи чуть-чуть. Красавец, да?
That's why Russian military are so pessimistic about their perspective in Ukraine. Consider Strelkov. For 29 days Russia didn't achieve strategic success on any directions. My worst fears came true. We get involved into a long, bloody, and very dangerous war.
9 суток специальной операции прошло. Нигде, ни на одном направлении стратегического успеха не достигнуто, только оперативные успехи. Более того, противник относительно успешно проводит мобилизацию и начинает контратаковать. О чем, естественно, Коношенков ни ухом, ни рылом не упоминает в своих сводках. То есть, к сожалению, я констатирую, что мои самые пессимистические прогнозы о том, что мы втянемся в кровавый тени-толкай, длительный, изнуряющий и чрезвычайно опасный для Российской Федерации, оправдались полностью на данный момент.
That's why Russia is losing so many generals. Why are they even being present on frontline? Because Russia is losing and Putin knows it. He's furious and sending his generals to the front line to take direct control in order to improve the situation. And there they get killed. Putin launched a war, expecting an immediate victory. Russian propaganda leaflets literally boasted that Kyiv gonna be captured in one day. Yes, that's propaganda, but it reflected a widespread Russian conviction that Ukrainians wouldn't resist. What consequences will it bring for Russia? Western analysts exaggerate how robust Russia is. Consider this recent article by Neil Ferguson. I think he's wrong. Putin won't be able to reach a result that Russian people will view as a victory. Any treaty will mark Russian defeat. That's why smarter ones of the Russian elite are already trying to get off the sinking ship. Here is Chubais cashing out at an ATM in an Istanbul airport. Chubais is the major architect of modern Russia and he's running away. In 1990s, the St. Petersburg liberal economist Chubais designed Russian privatization. He purposefully organized it in a most shady and non-transparent way to quickly create lots of rich people owing everything to the regime. That's how oligarchs' fortunes were created. By the late 1990s, crony systemic liberals like Chubais got tired of democracy. They didn't want parliamentarian, didn't want public politics. They wanted a czar who'll defend them from the public opinion, which hated them. So they chose Putin and boosted him out of nothing. In 2010s, Chubais turned to Russian ethno-nationalism. He funded nationalist media such as Sputnik and Pogrom who advocated building the Russia for Russians in these borders. Chubais is personally responsible for building oligarchy, Putinism and jingoist delusions in Russia. There is hardly any other living person who bears so much responsibility for what is happening in Russia now than Chubais. He created oligarchy, promoted Putin to power, boosted Russian ethno-nationalism. He was all-powerful and now he ran away. Because he knows Russia is over. Well, Chubais made a good decision. Run while you still can. MPs from the United Russia ruling party already can't leave the country without permission. Only smarter ones who escaped before the prohibition are now safe abroad, like Milanov. Others are trapped in Moscow. Now let's finally outline a scenario of collapse. First, sanctions will destroy its technological and supply chains. Many believe in self-sufficiency of Russia, but Russia is not autarkic. It's not an evil empire but a trade federation totally dependent on technological import. Machinery is the first victim of sanctions. It's using foreign components on all levels from microchips to bearings. Thus sanctions are destroying 1. Military industry 2. Transport and communication lines 3. Production of consumer goods. Thus they are bringing Russia apart. Sanctions won't make Putin back off. They won't make Russian people rebel. That'd be a collective action of a huge scale which isn't gonna happen. They will undermine Russian military efforts and incentivize a much smaller scale, easier to do collective action, local separatism. Let's start with military industry. Counterintuitive it may sound, it is especially import dependent. Why? Well, because it's relatively complex. For example, it is the main consumer of precision manufacturing industrial machines in Russia, buying over 80% of these machines. Annexation of Crimea was a major blow on Russian military industry. As Sverdlovsk Oblast Minister of Industry Sergei Perestrin admitted, Ural plants, including tank-producing ones, started having problems with components supply immediately after 2014. Thus new types of Russian weaponry, for example, the Army tank, were never mass-produced. Mass production was supposed to commence in 2015, but in 2022 it still didn't, because of the sanctions. Electronic components import, transmissions import, everything stopped after Crimean. There's another aspect of the problem. It seems Russia lost many technological competences and capacities it used to have under the USSR. In the USSR, job of engineer was prestigious and highly paid. Military engineers were kings, but now they are losers with no respect or salary. As a result, construction bureaus and engineering institutions didn't get new competent engineers. Some would come after a college, but then had to leave, because they had to feed their families. The average age of an engineering tank industry is now around 55-60 years. That means that while old engineers were dying and retiring, too few capable youngsters came to learn from them. So many competences of old engineers died with them. As then Deputy Minister of Defense Makarov pointed out, Russia lost Soviet technologies of producing a tank barrel. No wonder that all the production on Uralvagonzavod, the only producer of tanks in Russia, is now stopped. Old sanctions introduced in 2014 didn't allow to develop new innovative tanks. New sanctions of 2022 don't allow to build any tanks at all. Russian military industry is fully reliant on Western equipment and components. Consider Moshevilihansky Zavody, the major producer of MLRS and artillery systems in Russia. As you see, they are using a turn-mill industrial machine of an Italian company, Taki Giacomo e Figlispa. Consider an interview with the CEO of Baltic Industrial Company that supplies Russian military plants. We don't produce industrial machines, bearings, ball screws, spindles. Yeah, Russia can produce lots of cool weaponry, but it will fall because it can't produce any boring stuff. Non-military industry is dying. 2. Car and vehicles plants are stopping for the lack of details and components. They are laying off their workers. Of course, some try to find solutions and build new vehicles from Russian components. Sounds good, doesn't work. See this order of Yekaterinburg police. Policemen are not allowed to use their foreign-produced cars anymore because under the sanction regime they can't re-repair it. There are no components for that. Another victim is the railways. Russia switched its railroad cars production from the roller bearings to the cassette bearings. That's more efficient, but all 3 cassette bearing producing plants in Russia are both foreign-owned and import-dependent. Railways gonna have problems. The railways are the main carcass keeping the country together. Unlike North America, they are crucially important not only for transporting goods, but also the people. Most of Russian autoroutes are horrible. It's the railways that connect this country. Soon they'll be disrupted. Russian airlines are disrupting right now. Russia isn't getting new components for its Boeings and Airbuses, won't be able to maintain them. That's why Pobeda Airline, for example, gonna reduce its fleet by 40%. There are so few details that you can't keep all the planes working. Yes, Russia has its own aircraft industry, but the aircraft factories are working on foreign components. 2. Rostov aircraft plant closed for the lack of import, so Russian-produced Antonov 24 and Antonov 26 planes gonna be impossible to repair. They'll function for 5-6 months the most. Consider this interview where a minister and his aides discussing that they won't be able to repair the stolen planes abroad. Yeah, they'll try to do it in Russia. Good luck repairing them with the import of components stopped.
Скажите, пожалуйста, значит, за техническим состоянием всего нашего авиапарка мы здесь будем следить, тоже на территории нашей страны? Да. С запчастями, наверное, мы в течение какого-то времени тоже разберемся. Не говорит ли это о том, что в течение какого-то времени, через 2-3 года, мы не сможем эти борта обслуживать на территории западных стран, там же, где они обслуживаются?
Они не будут обслужены на Западе, их даже не выпустят, всего того, что мы забрали чужую собственность.
Как только мы начинаем эксплуатировать эти самолеты, все, никогда уже на техническое обслуживание, на форму самолета эти приниматься в Европе.
Мы будем делать формы сами.
Делать форму сами.
У нас есть 3 инженеринговых центра, довольно больших. Это есть Seven Engineering в Домодедово, это Внуково, 400-й завод во Внуково, и Атикник, это Шереметьево, Аэрофлотовский центр Шереметьево-Внуково. Мы на своих центрах будем делать C-чеки, D-чеки, это полная разборка. Пока мы это делаем. У нас есть для этого все основания и сертифицированные
Значит,
люди.
эти порты никогда уже выпускаться
Никогда.
с территории Российской Федерации не будут.
Только дружественные страны.
Только в дружественных.
Third aspect of Russian fall will be the decrease of supply in literally all consumer goods. Mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. There are two options. Prices can rise or there will be deficit. At this point, both phenomena take place. People are shocked by new prices.
Хлеб, блядь. Ебучие таблетки для унитаза, 40 рублей. Ебучий доширак. Что там еще, 40 рублей, да? Ну, может, чуть подороже. 2 салата, блядь. Ну, сколько там? Ну, ни о чем. Сыр. Ну, сыр рублей 200 с лихуем. Колбаса. Ну, 200 с лихуем. Пакет пустой. Ни сигарет, ни пива, блядь, ни закуски. Ни хуя. Че там, от 13-й зарплаты откажемся, блядь? В пользу ЛНР, ДНР. Или еще чего, или в пользу Крыма. Ебать, вы охуели или где? Плешивый, ты не ебанулся ли? Мы скоро, блядь, на 1000 и вот это не купим. Ты чё, гондон, со страной делаешь? Ты берега попутал или чё? Это чё за пиздец? 880 вот за это вот, все. Вот мне в рейс ехать, блядь, я вот взял себе на перекусить по дороге, блядь. Мне ехать 1000 километров, мне вот этого хватит. Но 1000, ёб твою мать. Ты страну принял с курсом доллара 13. Сейчас доллар 80. Ты, блядь, ты вообще понимаешь, что происходит?
There's of course a deficit in consumer goods, like sugar. You can see lots of videos of people shouting, fighting, arguing over this precious deficit good.
Вы куда заходите-то? Куда вы, куда вы? Выходите, куда вы идете? Выходите. Выйдите из склада. Ну вы рвете уже сахар-то. Ёбаный бро.
Зачем вы чужую тележку лезете?
Да выйдите вы из склада.
Тележка женщины, зачем вы ее забираете?
Да куда мне идти? Они у меня все возьмут.
Пиздец.
Да вообще, все, сегодня больше нет сахара.
Да у нас пакет рассыпался.
As sugar becomes deficit, incentives to steal and stock it rise exponentially. Here you supermarket workers stealing sugar from its stocks and loading into a car trunk. A woman is commenting, that's why they don't have sugar on shelves. Many will try to enrich on sugar trade. Here a man got arrested for selling a 50-kilogram sack with sugar for above market price. The government is already fighting against the profiteering. Such things will only increase.
Короче, на вечер у меня остаток остался 3 мешка до завтрашнего утра. Утром я еду на склад.
Понял. А это чей сак? Завод звонили, не продают, говорят.
Завод тебе не продаст?
Не через завод, через меня.
Они ждут, когда вот такая же цена будет.
As you see, Russian supermarkets are already restricting the purchases of socially important goods. Too many try to buy as much as possible to stock it and create the shortage. Now let's think in higher orders. People trying to stock as much as possible is indeed exacerbating the existing deficit. But the thing is, regions and towns are doing the same. It's not individuals stocking sugar that will kill Russia, it's that governors are doing the same. When we think about Russian state, we are usually operating in dichotomy: Putin versus people. Will people support the leader? Will they rebel? They won't, but it's irrelevant. The state is not homogeneous. Putin can ignore sanctions, but his subordinates can't. Yes, the core electorate of Putin is standing by their president and will stand by the end. Putin is sacred. They are not gonna blame him for anything. Whom they are gonna blame for their problems, for the lack of food, a corrupt mayor and governor, of course.
Мы, отряды Путина, поддерживаем сегодня Владимира Владимировича Путина за то, что так он поступил. Он сказал: я долго думал, я вел переговоры, я вел, собирал всех для того, чтобы обсудить эти вопросы. Я долго ждал, я каждого просто со всеми переговаривал. Терпение лопнуло, и я принял этот вызов. Россия приняла этот вызов. Да, и мы, конечно, но мы не воюем. У нас не война идет, у нас идет освобождение народа. А у нас Путин гений. За Россию, за Путина. Держись, Владимир Владимирович, мы с вами.
Отряды Путина, и я хочу сказать, мы поддерживаем Путина. И ему, конечно, очень трудно, но мы его поддерживаем, и победа будет только за нами.
Владимиру Владимировичу было нелегко принять это решение по Украине, но он решился на такой ответственный шаг. Я думаю, что вся будет победа за нами, и все будет, мир наступит, там благополучие. В общем, спасибо Владимиру Владимировичу, я его очень поддерживаю.
Я уважаю нашего президента, и я полностью поддерживаю его курс. Правильно сделано. С этим надо было решать, может быть, даже еще раньше, но сейчас уже будет, и считаю, что будет все нормально. Мы раздавим эту фашистскую гадину, и жизнь будет лучше и украинцев, и мы будем вместе с ними.
Владимир Владимирович, я поддерживаю. Он президент мира, а Байден фашист.
I am not joking. Lots of Putin's supporters are fully supporting Z invasion. They are also already suffering from the economic problems. Whom they are gonna blame? The governor, that corrupt scum, guilty of everything. Putin is sacred, but governor is not. This Russian political culture makes position of regional authorities unbearable. Putin is sacred, innocent, unaccountable. That's the local authority who's responsible for the quality of life. The life quality is deteriorating because of Putin, but governor will be blamed. Now what they're gonna do? Some are trying to encourage return to subsistence farming. Sounds good. Doesn't work. Indeed, in the past Russians survived economic crises via their dachas and private gardens, but that culture is gone. Boomers are the last generation who could do it. Subsistence farming is extremely unproductive. It's also extremely laborious and time-consuming. It also requires competences that the youngsters simply lack. In the good economy, expensive oil years, they never learned how to garden from their babushka and now won't learn quickly. The current economic crisis is unique in Russian history. First of all, it's now uniquely old. During the previous crises it was much younger. Even more importantly, it is the first crisis that happened after most of population forgot how to do subsistence farming. Russian economic situation is awful. It's a catastrophe which local authorities will be blamed for. What they are gonna do? Stock up. Stock as much as possible. That's already happening. Stavropol doesn't have sugar shortage. Why? They don't allow exporting it to other regions. That will be the major factor of Russian collapse. It's not that regional authorities will suddenly declare independence. They won't, at least for now. It's that they will act in the best interest of their regions. Because if a catastrophe happens there, they'll be blamed for it. In acting in the best interest of their regions under the deficit of literally everything, they'll inevitably stock up, thus breaking supply lines and technological chains. With the communication lines deteriorating due to sanctions, it will be easier and easier to do Russia won't fall because of collective morally justified action. Its cohesion will be broken by its own officials aiming to avoid catastrophe in their own region. That will be a de facto economic separatism. Political one will come much later, in discussing the collapse of Russia and rise of separatist states on its ruins. Many focus on ethnic conflicts and identity politics. That's not completely wrong. I'll argue, however, that the main drivers of collapse will be geographic and socio-economic. The best benchmark for Russian collapse isn't Yugoslavia or Austro-Hungary. It's a fall of Spanish colonial empire with all of its creoles versus peninsulas divisions. Russia is much more of a Latin American country politics, economy, culture-wise than many think. End of thread.